6.4 Abyss, super easy, just like the Stygian Onslaught in this version. We have here a Hex Mulani Vape team, and there's really not much to talk about here. It's just the standard Hex Mulani rotation where you do the Mono Burst and then a couple of normal attacks to extend the duration. The Perpetual Mechanical Array, this boss is really standard, nothing really special about him, no weird mechanics, just a big DPS check basically, which we have enough of. And he's gonna jump up, and we're gonna actually jump up, or, okay, I didn't do it there, but I had a trick where I would jump up as he came down so that I would avoid the damage and avoid being staggered. But now he splits, and we are going to be taking out the crab. I actually did do part of my rotation on the main boss, which is bad, so I had to do like partial rotation on this one. But Mualani just deals a lot of damage in this comp, so it's enough. Now we're going to take him out nice and easy with a bite and a burst. And now we're moving on to the second half. This is going to be the Radiant Moon Gecko, or whatever it's called. Anyways, we have Nilou freeze, and I'm able to run Mualani in the first half because I have an invested Nilou, and she deals not as much damage as Mualani, but still a lot. Still much better than any 4-star could in this team. Yeah, it's the Radiant Moonfly. It has that mechanic where it hits you with like a debuff and you have to heal to full to clear it, in which case you get buffed. But my Escoffier doesn't have enough healing to deal with that because I had all of my characters weak from the debuff and then also the Farina drain. So I didn't actually clear the debuff on Farina, so her pets are not critting and dealing like no damage, but my Nilou and my Escoffier do have the debuff removed, and they're doing a lot of damage. That's really nice. And I know I am using the shield team, but this doesn't actually use that second half bonus where it's cryo normal attacks get buffed. So I'm not completely using the shield, but it is the Escoffier, and she's like busted, and it is shilling those bosses, or the cryo bosses, whatever. So yeah, anyways, Congo Mato, and here I take a lot of damage on Milani. I have to dash there, otherwise I would have died. You're gonna see me have a skill issue here later on in the video. I'm just doing all the Abyss runs, and then I'm gonna show the skill issue that I had. Anyways, I used the Traveler Burst to explode everything so that he falls down, and that's really nice. And I am using Songs of Days Past on Mona with Prototype Amber, so I do have sustain, I do have healing so that I don't die. That's one of my main gripes with Mualani teams, is that without Shilonen you kind of don't have a sustain, but luckily the Hex versions do allow you to get some sustain with Songs of Days Past, Prototype Amber, Mona. And here I'm able to get out 2 bites while he's resting after he spins a little, which is really nice. And now I'm just waiting to finish him off. And I actually have a massive skill issue here. So you're gonna see this. I get the Traveler skill up, and then on Mualani, I greed, I do 1 bite, and then I try to greed the second one, but there's no Pyro, so I don't actually vape it. And I do the same thing again, and I have to use my burst, and that was just like a massive skill issue. But this Abyss is so easy that you can have skill issues like that and still clear. Now we have the second half. This one is the Granny boss, Granny Local Legend. Is really not an interesting fight if you have freeze. We're gonna see this, but you see this small enemy, this is basically the Granny fight. She just gets frozen and she just stands still, and because I'm playing into the shield mechanic, she doesn't get her attacks off, so it's like extra boring. So I'm just casting my abilities, dealing damage. It says trigger frozen to prevent the armor from attacking, so not only is she standing still, but she's also not going to be attacking me because I have freeze and have Escoffier. And yeah, it does feel nice to have the shield characters, the on-banner shield characters. But I also feel like freeze is kind of a toxic kind of archetype, right? Because when you freeze the enemies, like small enemies like this, obviously it doesn't apply for bosses, but you freeze them and they don't attack you. So naturally it needs to have some sort of like less damage to offset that. And that's why freeze was kind of bad until Escoffier came along. And maybe it should have stayed bad, but I'm not too sure about that. Anyways, we have here the third chamber with Mualani Vape. I actually had a Candace Shalonen comp before this, and I met this boss, and he had this Pyro or Electro Swirl requirement, and then I realized, well, back to the drawing board, I guess. Anyways, with Sucrose and the Pyro Traveler, this part is easy, then he falls down. And right here, I actually just end my rotation early because no Pyro means basically no damage in this Vape team, so just restart the rotation. No big deal. And I actually have the Sprint card. I didn't mention this, but I'm not using it right here. A bit rusty from my practice in the 6.3b Abyss, but I actually don't need it. Like I said, this Abyss is really easy, so you don't need to play perfectly. You can have skill issues. You don't need to min-max every single buff, and you'll still be able to clear. And that brings me up to another point, is that, is this Abyss easier because it's Varka? Because Varka is kind of like a weak character. He's not nearly as strong as the Lunar Shield characters. And I actually saw a Reddit post about this topic, and I personally think that it is weaker because Varka is not as strong as the Lunar enemies. Anyways, here we have the Cryo Skirt shield boss, and it's just the same as the Stygian Onslaught, so it's not very interesting, so I'm not actually going to talk about the gameplay, because, yeah, it's the same as the Stygian Onslaught, and it stays still, and if you get enough cryo on him, he doesn't attack you, so it's extra boring. But anyways, back to the Varka topic. Some people on that Reddit post were also saying that this Abyss also isn't shilling Lunar, so we don't have those Lunar enemies where if you don't have Lunar reactions, you all of a sudden have to deal with 2 times the health bar. And I agree with that also, that those enemies are kind of bad, and they just inflate the difficulty so high. Like, that's not supposed to be normal. You're not supposed to be dealing with 2 times more health, but at the same time, I feel like this Abyss is easier because Varka is not that. He's good enough, but he's not that great. So I think it's both things being true, that this Abyss is slightly toned down, and also we don't have to deal with the very difficult Lunar Shill enemies. Anyways, we're gonna take him out here, and now we're going to see the mega skill issue I had with Mualani against Kongamato. This is a skill issue I was talking about. I get hit by his last attack for more than 24k HP. I don't know how that happened, but when I was recording this, I saw Mualani fly back, and I was like, she's gonna get back up, right? But no, she didn't, and then I had to reset. Here we have Mualani. I have the wrong goblet on, so I should have a bit more crit rate. But we also have Mona with Songs of Days Past. This is what makes the comp work, is without Songs of Days Past and Prototype Amber, we don't have Sustain. We don't have any real buffing capability on Mona on the artifact set, but Songs of Days Past is perfect for that. Traveler with Scroll and Favonius Sword. Sucrose with Vivi and Sac Frags, lots of Elemental Mastery. Nilou with Marai Shosei Hunter, Farina, standard build. Seat Lolly, this time with Thrilling Tales, because we don't need the double skill from Sacrificial Fragments for that final boss in Chamber 3. We start with energy and we're able to cast our burst and then get our cryo application with our skill. Escoffier, standard build.